When people picture abandonment, I think they usually imagine something louder. A slammed door, a suitcase, a note, a person who has already decided they do not belong to you anymore. What happened to me was quieter than that. It happened in our kitchen, under soft yellow lights, with a dish towel over my shoulder and a bottle brush in my hand. It happened while my daughter was 6 days old. That detail matters. Not because 6 is a dramatic number, but because 6 days is still the part where time does not move normally. 6 days is not a week. It is a weather system. The room is always too warm. Your shirt is always slightly damp. Your body still feels like an argument it has not recovered from. You stop measuring your life by mornings and nights and start measuring it by diapers, feeds, missed naps, and whether the baby's breathing sounds peaceful or suspicious. At 6 days, I was still walking carefully, still lowering myself into chairs like somebody twice my age, still learning that pain can become so routine it starts introducing itself as logistics. Our daughter, Nora, was healthy. That was the important thing. I knew that. I said it constantly, partly because it was true, and partly because new mothers are expected to say gratitude before anything else. Yes, I am exhausted, but she is healthy. Yes, I am scared, but she is healthy. Yes, I cried in the bathroom this morning, but she is healthy. There is a version of womanhood that asks you to narrate your own vanishing as long as the baby is thriving. I was trying not to do that. My husband, Samir, had taken 2 weeks off. Not because he is unusually generous, because that was always the plan. He said he wanted to be fully present, wanted to learn the rhythm with me, wanted us to feel like a team from the beginning. I loved him more for saying that. Or maybe I loved the future. Those words seemed to promise. Samir was not lazy. That would have been easier. Lazy people are at least consistent. Samir was one of those men who can seem deeply caring, as long as the caring still feels flattering to them. He liked buying the stroller. He liked carrying boxes upstairs. He liked telling friends, without being asked, that he was the kind of husband who would never leave me unsupported. He liked the identity of support before support became repetitive, unphotogenic, and tired. His mother, Farah, was due to arrive the following Thursday. She lived in another state, not another country, but far enough away that every visit carried the tone of occasion. She had not met Nora yet. She was excited. That part was real. I do not want to make this uglier than it was. Farah could be intense, but she was not cruel. She just came from the kind of family culture where arrival itself is treated like a need. If someone travels to see you, you do not simply host them. You honor the effort. You make the trip feel worth it. You create memory around it. Under normal circumstances, I could understand that. Under normal circumstances, I might even like it. But there is nothing normal about the first days after a baby. Before Nora was born, I had said one thing very clearly. Actually, I had said it 4 different times, because women learn early that direct statements become suggestions once enough people want something else. I told Samir I did not want house guests right away, not because I hated his mother, not because I wanted to isolate, because I wanted a small protected window where I did not have to host, smile, cover myself carefully, or perform gratitude on command. We compromised. A word that sounds noble until you inspect who had to bend. Farah would come after the first week. She would stay nearby, not with us. Visits would be short, no long daytime hosting, no expectation that I entertain, no tourist agenda, no side adventures. The whole point, Samir said, was support. He used that word, support. He said it with such ease that I believed the word would still mean itself later. The first hint arrived on day 4. He was sitting beside me on the couch, one hand on the baby, scrolling flights with the other. He smiled at something, then said, "Mom has never actually seen the shoreline towns up here." I remember looking at him without fully understanding why my stomach tightened. I said, "Okay." He kept scrolling. Then he said, "If weather's nice, I might drive her down Saturday. Just show her around a little." Might. Show her around a little. There are so many disasters that first enter a room wearing tiny, harmless clothes. I asked, "How long is a little?" He shrugged. "You know, maybe 1 night, maybe 2, just depends." I thought I had misheard him, not because he mumbled, because my brain still assumed we were living inside the promises we had made before the baby came. I looked down at Nora, asleep against my chest, one fist tucked under her chin like she was already guarding something. Then I said, "You mean after your mom gets here?" He gave me the kind of patient look people use when they think what they are saying is reasonable, and your confusion is the unusual part. "Yeah," he said. "She's flying all the way here. I don't want her to just sit in a hotel room and leave." I waited for him to hear himself. Sometimes, that is all you do in a marriage. You wait, quietly, for the sentence to finish revealing itself. It did. He added, "And you'll be at home anyway, so it makes sense." You'll be at home anyway. There it was. The sentence beneath the sentence. Not, "I know you'll still be recovering." Not, "I know nights are hard." Not, "I know I'm supposed to be here learning this with you." Just the assumption that because my body and the baby would physically remain in the house, I counted as stationary. Covered. Handled. Like a lamp. Like a subscription. Like background infrastructure. I said, "Samir, I do not want to be alone overnight with a 1-week-old baby." He sighed, but softly, as if he were the one being asked for some unreasonable sacrifice. "You won't be alone," he said. "Your sister said she could stop by if you needed something." My sister, who had 2 elementary school kids, a job, and lived 40 minutes away, stopped by. As if postpartum support was the kind of gap you fill with a borrowed charger. I asked him, "Why would I need my sister if the whole point of your leave was that you would be here?" He did not answer right away. He shifted Nora's blanket instead, which is another small thing people do when they want to touch care without actually offering it. Then he said, "You're making this sound worse than it is. It's just 2 nights. There are phrases that instantly expose a hierarchy. Just 2 nights. As if the number mattered more than what those nights were made of. 2 nights of a baby who still confused dawn with midnight. 2 nights of getting in and out of bed slowly, because my body was still negotiating with pain. 2 nights of wondering whether every cry meant hunger, gas, fever, or nothing at all. 2 nights of no second pair of hands, for the hour when exhaustion makes simple tasks feel morally loaded." I said, "It's not about the number, it's about when. It's about what you're leaving me alone in." He leaned back. That was when the conversation shifted from discussion to defense. I could see it happen. The slight stiffening in his face. The private courtroom opening behind his eyes. He said, "You knew my mom was coming." That line almost impressed me. It was so clean. So irrelevant, so ready. I said, "Yes. I knew she was coming to meet the baby. I did not know you planned to use your leave to take a scenic road trip with her." He winced at scenic, as if I had made his idea sound trivial, which is one of the fastest ways to offend a person after they have already trivialized you. "It's not a vacation," he said. "She's my mother. I barely see her. She wants to make a memory out of the trip." I remember staring at him with that strange postpartum clarity that arrives when you are too tired to decorate your thoughts. Make a memory. As if the week our daughter entered the world was somehow not already occupied. As if the woman in front of him, still healing, still bleeding, still waking every 90 minutes, was asking him to choose between duty and joy, instead of asking him to notice where his first duty had gone. I said, "Do you hear yourself? You're talking like your mother's visit is the main event, and me recovering here with your baby is the background condition." He got quiet then, not ashamed, evaluative. The way people go quiet when they realize the thing they meant has been translated too accurately. That night, we did the awful married thing where a fight gets placed on a shelf because the baby needs to eat, a load of laundry needs switching, and no one has enough sleep for a full emotional war. But shelved things do not disappear. They wait. The next afternoon, my friend Naomi came by with soup and the exact kind of face that tells you she can smell tension through a closed door. She asked how I was, which is a dangerous question when someone means it, so I told her. Not dramatically, not all at once, just in pieces, while she portioned lentil soup into mugs because bowls felt too ambitious. When I finished, she said, "He wants to leave?" "Leave?" I said, "Yes." She blinked. Then she said, "Oh." People's first honest reactions are often very small. Then she asked, "Does he understand what leave is for?" That was when I felt my chest tighten, not from anger, but from relief. Because I had been starting to feel crazy. Not fully crazy. Just the ordinary feminine kind, where someone else's unreasonable request gets repeated so calmly that you begin checking your own pulse for error. Does he understand what leave is for? That was the whole story. Not the drive. Not the hotel. Not the sightseeing. The meaning of leave. When Farah arrived, I tried very hard to stay open. She brought tiny knit socks, containers of spiced rice, and enough tenderness toward the baby that for a few hours I felt guilty for dreading any part of the weekend. Then Saturday morning came. I was in the bedroom, trying to feed Nora while also drinking cold coffee, and answering the oldest question in early motherhood, which is whether I had already done this recently, or only dreamed that I did. I heard Samir in the hallway, light in his voice, moving around with purpose. A door opened. A suitcase wheel bumped the baseboard. Farah laughed. I stepped out holding the baby and saw his overnight bag by the front door. There is a special kind of pain in watching a bad possibility finish becoming real. It is not shock, it is something flatter, more humiliating, because you have already suffered it once in private and now here it is again in furniture form. I said, "You packed a bag?" He looked at me, then at the bag, then back at me, as though the object itself should not have needed interpretation. "We're only doing one night," he said. "Maybe two if traffic's bad coming back. I told you not to spiral." Not to spiral. I wish men understood how often they borrow mental health language just to avoid moral clarity. I said, "I am not spiraling. I am standing in my own bedroom, looking at my husband leave me alone with a newborn, while he takes his mother sightseeing." Farah froze. Not theatrically, just enough for the room to feel suddenly inhabited by the truth. She said, "Samir told me you were okay with a little drive." Of course he had. There are few lonelier feelings than hearing your own absence from someone else's version of your life. I looked at her and said, "I told him I was not comfortable being alone overnight yet." Her face changed. Not into guilt exactly, more like unwanted comprehension. She turned to him. "What?" she said. And there it was, the thing he had apparently not expected. The possibility that saying it plainly in front of another adult would make it sound exactly as selfish as it was. He lifted both hands, that universal gesture of a person who wants to become the mediator of a mess they created. "It's not like that," he said. "Layla's making it sound extreme. I just thought Mom shouldn't come all this way and not see anything," Farah said. "She came to see the baby." I have replayed that sentence many times. Not because it was grand. Because it was clean. She came to see the baby. Not the coast. Not the antique shops. Not the harbor restaurants. The baby. The room stayed quiet long enough for me to hear Nora swallow. Then Samir said something that finally broke whatever gentleness I was still trying to preserve. He said, "I just don't see why everyone is acting like you can't handle one night." Everyone. Interesting. As if this had become a crowd problem. As if the issue was no longer his choice, but women embarrassing him by agreeing with each other in plain language. I said, "I can handle a night. That is not the point. I can handle 100 things I should not have to handle alone. The point is that you are choosing to leave." Something in Farah's face softened then, and I realized she had probably spent years watching different versions of her son without seeing what they would cost another woman. She took a breath and said, "I don't want this trip. Unpack the bag." He looked stunned, like betrayal had entered the room from the wrong direction. He said, "Mom, come on. I already planned it." Planned it. That was the sentence that ended the last of my confusion. Not thought about it. Not considered it. Not mentioned it casually. Planned it. Which meant, while I was timing feedings, freezing pads, and learning how to stand up without wincing, he had been building an alternate use for the time he had promised to us. Farah said, "Then plan it another time." He did not answer. He just picked up the bag, carried it to the bedroom, and shut the door too carefully, which is how restrained people slam things. The rest of the day felt scraped raw. Farah stayed only 2 hours. She held Nora, washed the bottles in the sink without asking, and before leaving, she touched my shoulder and said, "You should have quiet right now. I'm sorry this got twisted." That line stayed with me, not because it fixed anything, because it named the exact injury. Twisted, that was what had happened. A protected window had been twisted into a hospitality puzzle. A father's leave had been twisted into tour guide availability. My recovery had been twisted into evidence of independence. That night, Samir slept on the edge of the bed like a man who believed proximity itself counted as participation. Around 3 in the morning, while Nora fussed against my chest, I looked at him asleep and understood something I wish I had not learned so early. Some people do not leave you when things get hard. They leave you inside the hard thing while remaining technically nearby. They make proposals. They explain logistics. They redefine support until your loneliness sounds unreasonable. And then, if forced, they stay. But they stay like someone whose real plan was interrupted. The next morning, he tried to repair it with tone. Coffee. Toast. A softened voice. He said, I think we both got heated yesterday. I almost laughed. Because nothing reveals a man's priorities faster than calling your pain mutual once his plan fails. I said, no, you got corrected yesterday. That isn't the same thing. He stared at me, really stared, like I had stepped out of a role he did not know I was allowed to leave. I kept going, because there are moments in a marriage when you either tell the exact truth or spend years renting yourself back in pieces. I said, the problem is not that you wanted your mom to enjoy her visit. The problem is that somewhere in your head, her enjoyment started sounding more urgent than my safety, my healing, and your first week as Nora's father. You treated my recovery like the fixed background, like the thing that would stay put while you arranged the meaningful part elsewhere. He said, that's not fair. I said, it's completely fair, because if your mother had not pushed back, you would have gone. He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked away. That was answer enough. People think betrayal always arrives with replacement. Another lover. Another secret life. Another obvious competing loyalty. Sometimes it is much plainer. Sometimes it is simply the moment someone shows you exactly where your need ranks, when it interferes with the version of themselves they would rather be. That was ours. Not an affair, not a crime, not a scandal. A ranking. His mother's trip. My body, the baby, his leave. And in the ranking he made, I was the thing already accounted for. The person expected to absorb. The woman who would still be there, so naturally she could carry more. I do not think our marriage ended that weekend. But something finished. Something clean. The illusion that love automatically protects women from becoming infrastructure. It does not. People have to choose that protection over and over, in tired rooms, in ordinary hours, when no one is clapping for them. He almost did not choose it. And once you see that, you cannot return to the softer story you were telling yourself before.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.